3, 2, and we are live. So welcome everybody. I've lost count of how many we've done, but this is a social distance learning series. This is Stop the Bleed, the sequel, where we're going to do some more demonstrations. Lonnie's going to show us some stuff. I'll go over the agenda in a second. But our instructors tonight are three. There are three of them. We've got Lonny Weissman, who taught the first Stop the Bleed class. Lonnie was a medic in one of the wonderful conflagrations our country's gotten itself into, and I'll let him, if he wants to say anything more about it, tell you all about that. We got Carl Cowan, who taught our Stop the Bleed class at National last year, who also happens to be an extraordinary emergency management professional and just got cleared from COVID-19, so he is not sick. Yay. And then last but not least, we've got Alessandro Padovani, who is, in addition to being our lead firearms instructor with the club, he also happens to know an awful lot about plugging holes in people in addition to putting holes in people. So tonight, I am really excited because it's going to be kind of panel formatted to have all three of these experts here to talk to us about, to continue the conversation about emergency medical techniques, trauma medicine, that sort of thing. If you've not watched the Stop the Bleed video that Lonnie did 2 weeks ago now, I think, it's up on the site. Go check out the YouTube channel, have a look. It takes about an hour, but we're not going to repeat that class tonight. Tonight we're going to have, Lonnie's got a couple corrections from that class. Yep. He's going to show us how to use a pool noodle to make your own prop so that you can practice some of these techniques. Then we're going to have some wound packing demonstrations using both the newly created prop that, if you followed along, you'll have in front of you, as well as Carl's going to show us the real professional gel blocks, possibly even with goop coming out of them, so that you can see what it might look like for quote unquote real. We'll warn you about that in case anybody is even the tiniest bit queasy about pretend blood. And then we're going to do some more tourniquet demos. We're going to go over the different number of different types of tourniquets. The guys are going to show you, they might even put them on themselves and turn blue while we're talking. And then last, we'll finish up with some equipment demonstrations, including Al showing us how to pack the SFD Responder, which is the ankle rig from that he had helped design or designed. I'll let him actually give you the background when we get to it. That is available in the club store. And then they're going to show off some of their kits, and we'll have lots of questions and answers. If you have a question during the class, drop it in the chat. Myself or Mike Ross will pick it up and ask it for you, and there'll be an opportunity towards the end probably to have some live one-on-one conversations, because the class isn't that big tonight, so we might be able to do that and just unmute people and let them ask their own questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Lonnie to start us off with his minor corrections from the first class, and then show us how to build a pool noodle wound packing and possibly even tourniquet demonstration model.
Cool.
All yours,
good
Lonnie.
evening. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're doing well. So a couple of things that I want to go back on a little bit. When we first did the first class, these are the hyphen vents. And packaging on these is a little confusing, so I just want to clear up that this is a full set. So it is one each in each packet, not two. And then the other thing I want to talk about is expiration and shelf life. So I don't know if you can see this, but there is both the date that the lot was made and the date that you need to have used this by in order for it to still be effective. So in this case,
it was made January 1st, 2020, and expires.
Right, it expires. 2025. It expires in 2025, and the same is also.
We can see it.
Yeah, and the same is also true of your quick clot materials. It will have an expiration date. Sometimes, depending on the packaging, it will give you the lot date and the date that it was first produced. But it's always a little hourglass that tells you when you need to get rid of it. And notice that these have really long shelf lives. This is out 2025. So it's not like you have to go back through your stuff every year, at least not this type of the bleed stuff. You definitely want to check your first aid stuff, because that has a much less, a shorter lifetime. So things like Neosporin and certain types of wipes and things like that lose their effectiveness in a much shorter period of time. But the kind of packaging they use on the Quick Clot, the kind of packaging they use on the hyphen vents generally gives you a much longer shelf life, usually about 3 to 4 years. So I just wanted to cover that. So tonight, what I want to do is, and thank you, I'm going to give credit to Carl because when we first taught this, I said, Carl, I don't have body block. I don't have access to it. And so what should I do? And Carl said, hey, get a pool noodle. Well, it just so happens I have lots of pool noodles because it's has to do with the robotics program I work with. So I made my own, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate how you all can see that, I hope. I'm going to demonstrate what I did to create this. I first created a deep slice in my pool noodle, and then I did a puncture and rounded it out so that I had a hole. And that's basically what you do with a pool noodle. And then in terms of packing, let me see if I can find it now. Yeah, here we go. I'm using, this is a little trainer pack of Quick Clot. In the real world, in real life, if you open up a Quick Clot pack, it's going to have a stripe on it. This stripe makes it visible in X-ray, so that if the patient is taken into an ER and you have, for some reason, nobody's informed them that you packed the wound, and they go ahead and they do X-rays, they'll actually be able to see it before they have to do anything. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the technique for packing using my pool noodle. And I do a couple of things, and it's up to you. I like to actually get my finger started in this, and there's a couple of reasons why I don't like you probably aren't necessarily going to glove, but if you do, it's not much of a worry. But I don't like sticking my finger in a wound without some kind of a dressing around it. And so you're basically going to start by sticking your finger in there, and you're going to then start packing this, and you're going to keep packing it.
Do you want to tilt the camera down a little bit, please? Thank you.
How's that? Okay.
Perfect.
And you're going to keep packing that until you absolutely cannot get any more material into the wound cavity. And don't be surprised by the fact that you're going to use a heck of a lot of material depending on the depth of the wound. Once you get to the point where you can't put any more in, you take your remaining material and you're going to apply pressure. And you're gonna apply that pressure, and hopefully that's going to slow down the bleeding and allow you to then, what I would do in my case is I generally dress this over once I've applied pressure. I get good pressure dressing around it. It's all going to depend on what is happening in terms of the wound cavity, and then in terms of a deep lac wound, instead of one finger, I generally go around a couple of fingers, and then I go ahead and I do the same thing. And I will pack, and I will pack, and I will pack until there is nowhere else to go with material. And once I get there, again, I'm going to take the rest of the material and I'm going to apply pressure. And don't be afraid to apply good, solid pressure. Any questions? Any comments? Carl, anything you want to add?
No. One of the things that I talked about in the class, and I'm sure you covered it last time, was just there are some people who will say, you're not operator if you're not keeping your, gauze out of the muck, or, you're not feeding with one hand. It honestly, in a situation like this, it doesn't matter how you do it, so long as you're introducing the material and applying pressure. So people who are criticizing your technique with regard to wound packing are people who've never had to do anything of this sort, and are talking out of the side of their head. So
I can tell you from my personal experience during my time as a combat infantry medic in Vietnam, the last thing I worried about was sterile field.
Yep.
Because that's up to the evac hospitals and the units back there once the patient is out of my control. I'm just worried about the biggest problem, which is if they're doing massive bleeding, they're going to die if I don't do something quickly.
Exactly.
And so I don't worry about, I never worried about sterile field. because one of the things in the middle of the boonies, you don't have a sterile field anyway, so who the hell cares?
Yep.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Yeah, one question on your pool noodle example, is there a different technique if there's more than one stab sort of right next to each other? So for instance, when I was building my model while following along, I accidentally put another hole right next to the first one.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is if you have like in this case, let me tilt this down. In this case, my wound areas are fairly close. Seriously, if it's a wound that doesn't require that I tourniquet. So the first thing you're going to do, in reality, is you have to decide if wound packing and pressure. If pressure doesn't work, you have to go to the tourniquet. And so, but generally, what I would do is if I got to this point where I had packed this up as much as I could and I had all this extra material, I just take the other end and start packing there, if it's close enough. If not, if you happen to have other packing material, that quick clot material, that's fine. But you know, in terms of wounds that are close to each other, I would just pack with the material that I have, and whatever's left, if it's close enough, I just move on over and start packing again. But that's just me, okay? I would suggest that would work fine. Again, you're not worried about the sterile field, so don't worry about how much of this has been dropping around someplace. Just get it in there and get it working.
Great.
Carl, anything you want to add to that?
Want to show us some gooey stuff?
I will show some gooey stuff. I think Brian Robinson's got a question. He's waving. Hey, buddy.
Oh, he is waving. Go ahead and type it, Brian. We've got one question for them. With multiple wounds, is there a hierarchy to pack order with limited supply?
Whatever's spurting.
Yeah, the greatest amount of blood is where you want to go first. So if you have a major bleed, and then you've got another, you know, minor wound, what might be considered minor compared to that, absolutely, you pack the most traumatic wound first. And if you don't have any other packing material, and that packing helps in reducing blood flow, then direct pressure to the other area with some form of gauze or covering.
And
could
you give a little on the time to apply pressure? Like, what's the guidelines? Like, how long should you be applying pressure to?
So generally, you've only got a couple of minutes until you've passed out from blood loss. So you don't want to spend a whole lot of time, you know, doing pressure. But you should be able to determine. Okay, let me back up, because I'm looking at it from a more experienced view. Most people may not be able to determine what is a massive bleed versus, you know, maybe not so massive. What you're looking for is you're looking at spurting wounds. You're looking at pooling wounds. You're also looking at the color of the blood, because that's going to tell you about what type of bleed it is. So generally, you're looking at from a lay person's perspective. If you see massive amounts of blood loss, either spurting, pooling, that's where you're going to go first. And more than likely, wound packing is not going to do the trick. You're going to have to do a tourniquet if it's an area that can be that you can put a tourniquet on. You cannot, and hopefully those of you watch the other one, you cannot tourniquet the chest cavity. You can't tourniquet in the armpit area, and you can't tourniquet in the neck and thoracic area. Right. So you can only tourniquet on extremities.
And I'd encourage everybody to go back out and watch Stop the Bleed, because a lot of that was indeed covered. Brian's question was, should you clean the wound out before you start packing it? And then also, under what circumstances would you use a quick clot or similar clotting agents, which I think Carl's going to show us an example of the clotting agent one with the simulant. So
Carl, you want to take that one, or do you want?
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Okay.
Good segue.
This is a great segue. In the emergent setting, no, you are not debriding or cleaning a wound before introducing pack. If somebody has a bleeder to the degree that you've potentially already used the tourniquet and are now considering packing the wound, or all you have is pack, and so that's what you're doing, the priority is to stop the bleeding, which means introducing the material and stopping the hemorrhage from that arterial source. With regard to clotting agents, so the answer is it kind of depends. It's rare that people, at least in the first response setting, it's rare that we would use an independent clotting agent, like the granule quick clot things and stuff like that, like used to be readily available. They can be more trouble than they're worth depending on how careful you are with application. And so those notwithstanding, if you have a hemostatic, a gauze that's impregnated with a hemostatic agent, use it. There's no reason not to. If you're going to introduce, if you're even considering wound packing or introducing some material to try and control the bleeding, if you've got it, use it. You know, smoke them if you've got them, as it were. Yeah. Same deal with hemostatic agents. So, like Ed noted. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you, I think we'll wait till after you're done doing your clotting demonstration, but we can talk a little bit about different clotting agents. Would be good.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to shift my camera down a little bit just to get the model here into frame. And this simulant is actually half a clear clotting substance that comes with our the wound cube simulators that I use. These are from Focus Research. I don't get paid for pimping their stuff. It's just it's a neat little cube that has multiple different types of wound simulators on it. So there's like you actually can see in the front there, a somewhat superficial gash. This is a deeper exit wound simulator, and there are a couple of smaller entrance or puncture wound simulators. The red is just an Izzy soda. I promise it's not blood, so don't be stressed out. But if you need to look away, feel free. So Lonnie noted when he was demonstrating the noodle that he likes to have created his plug before introducing a finger into the wound cavity. That totally appropriate, and especially if you know, if this is somebody who you don't know or you're not sure what their health status is, protecting yourself and giving yourself a little bit of a barrier between your hand and whatever bone fragments or shrapnel or whatever else may be in that channel, that's important. Let's say this was like my little brother. I might opt, for example, to blunt dissect the wound with my finger before introducing material, explore that wound channel a little bit and see if I can just go ahead and find, yeah, that was gross, huh? Look at that. See if I can find the bleeder. And if you can introduce your finger and find it, you can actually impinge the artery and potentially stop the bleeding right there in the moment, just with your finger and a little bit of extra pressure. So once you've done that, you can then introduce your material either with your second hand or slightly retract, push the plug down, and then keep introducing material either with one hand or with two. There's no, like I said before, necessarily optimal way to do it, so long as you are steadily applying pressure and maintaining the introduction of the material into the cavity.
You slide that cube towards the camera a little bit. There you go. Thank you.
So still going, like Lonnie noted, you can get a good bit of material into not just a simulator, but you'd be surprised even from a superficial wound how much you can get into a wound track. When you get as much in there as you can, overpack, hold pressure. In the lay setting or for lay responders, folks who, you know, maybe this is the only training they've ever received, I typically say hold pressure until a trained professional arrives. So once you've packed a wound, unless you need to attend to some other life safety threat or it's not safe, or if they become unresponsive and you need to start CPR, then you're holding that pressure once you've introduced the material until a medic arrives. I didn't get any clots out of here. Probably the Izzy chewed them all up. But if I hadn't used that, if I had just used the clotting simulant, I probably would have had a few gel clots come out when I pulled out this gauze. So sorry, guys. I'll show you just a couple of the other wound cavities that are on this thing. So they have like two smaller sort of entry wound simulators. Same principle, you know, introduce and just
I got to get me some of that stuff.
Off to the races. I'm a big fan of slow is smooth, smooth is fast when it comes to packing. Obviously, you don't want to dilly-dally, but you don't have to, you know, beat the person up getting it in there. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt them enough. Just make sure that you're doing a good job and maintaining pressure. That's the most important part.
You see the laceration, or you?
Yeah, sure. I'll show that. Give me 1 second. Let me turn it around, and then I'm gonna have to clean my desk off here before. So here's the LAC model. You can see it's not as deep as the other wound models, but get this gauze ready. You'll see that it's going to hold a surprising amount of material. And with long lacs like this, you almost have to like stack the material. You start on one end, get it sort of jammed up into the corner, and then you're feeding material back and up and down sort of the length of the channel.
Remind everybody about the how much this hurts.
Yep. So
Yeah.
Nobody wants this. This is barbaric, and if they're awake and alert, they're going to be screaming at you, and hopefully you're able to control the hemorrhage before they lose consciousness. But if you don't, they're not going to be screaming at you for much longer. So I guess that's the upside, maybe. So.
Yeah, on a major bleed, they're going to lose consciousness fairly quickly.
Yep.
Cool.
You've got somewhere between like 45 and 60 seconds to get it right. So.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to flip back. Lonnie, did you want to show a couple other things, or should we move on to the
Well,
next?
I want to do the D-glove real quickly so we can go through. So normally, if normally in your trauma kit, in your first aid kit, you're going to have a pair of gloves. I just want to go through one thing is that unless you have an open wound on your skin, you don't have to worry about bloodborne pathogens. What you do really want to be careful of, especially with a spurting wound, is your eyes and mouth and nose are open membrane areas, and you really want to be careful when you approach that kind of a wound. Again, your safety is the most important thing. If you're not safe, then you can't do what you need to do to help whoever you're going to help. So you always want to approach it in a manner that gives you the greatest amount of safety. Once you glove up, again, what you do when you take a glove off is you're going to grab the glove with the gloved hand. You're going to pull it off and put it in the hand of the other gloved hand, right? You're going to do it just like that. Then you're going to take underneath the glove, right? You're going to take underneath the glove so you're not making contact with the surface of the glove that you have. And you're going to pull it down over the other glove. And now what you can do is you can dispose of the glove because you are on the inside of the glove, not the outside of the glove. So any contamination is now inside that fold.
And I want everybody to give Lonnie a great big hand because nitrile gloves are really freaking hard to find.
Well, I have, so fortunately, I have a supplier that usually keeps a fairly decent stock of gloves. So I probably have 50 or 60 pairs of nitrile gloves. My last order was this one, and this came from a company called Rescue Essentials. This is a 10-pack, but they sell them in much larger packs if you need them. They also just Carl has a couple of places that he recommends. But one of the things I like about Rescue Essentials is their prices are much more reasonable than My Medic. My Medic has really good stuff, but it's also really expensive.
All right, I have one question from the audience around one more around wound packing, and and after that, I think we might be ready to go on to the tourniquets. So the question is, I think I know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear you guys' answer. So you'd pack the laceration, you wouldn't attempt a layperson suture.
No.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
So first
I thought
off,
that was the answer.
Yeah. First off, you're bucking. There are all kinds of laws that come into play that you need to be careful of. In an emergency, so in California, by law, I can't penetrate skin. Okay, I cannot. By law, if I pack a wound, I basically violated the laws that govern my ability to provide initial first aid. The reality is if it's about saving somebody's life, including your own, who gives a shit? But if you, as a person that's helping somebody else, you don't want to do sutures. First off, because you haven't guaranteed a sterile field. So now you're closing up a wound or attempting to close a wound over a non-sterile field. The idea of infection and sepsis is so enormous that you really don't want to do that. You're better off leaving the wound packed the way it is, not trying to close it, and keeping pressure on it until you either have medical relief or you can move the person yourself. Carl, you want to say anything about that?
100% agree. The only time I would ever consider it is if I'm 100 miles away from anything alone and I need to hump myself out. And A, that's not me doing it to someone else. And right. B, if you are not trained in suturing, then that's not the time to learn. So
I have a lot of stuff in my personal trauma kit that is specifically for me that I would never think of using on somebody else, but I have a suture kit. I have a nasal airway. I have a lot of things in my trauma kit that I would never attempt to use on another person, but I have enough training to be able to do my own. And I would if I had absolutely had to. But generally that's really,
yeah. We'll talk about the trauma. We'll get to the trauma kits here after we look at the tourniquets for a few minutes. Who wants to go first with tourniquets?
I don't know, Carl, you want to do it or I
can start just because mine's probably the quickest because I don't actually have one here with me to demo, but Ed, I'm going to share my screen, okay?
Go for it. You are the host. You may do that.
Awesome. Let's see here. Sharing. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. So Lonnie's going to talk about a couple of devices that I think are the gold standard and what we typically organize our training around. But I also just wanted to briefly mention the Swat Tourniquet. It's an elastic band, multi-purpose style tourniquet, and basically I think it's a nice alternative when you either have a space constraint and can't pack a traditional size tourniquet like a soft T or a cat, or you have a special population, so somebody with interesting body habitus, or a pediatric patient, or a canine with anatomy that's not quite like ours, and a more traditional tourniquet might not work. Elastic goes where you put it, and you wrap it around just above the location of the bleed, and you keep wrapping until the bleeding stops. They're pretty effective. I've seen them used very effectively on kids, and have also heard about them used to great success in canines for those of you who might work in fields adjacent to working dogs, or you just go on a lot of hikes with your own pup and are worried about bleeding control for them out in the backcountry. So just bringing them up, it's about the size of a deck of cards. You can stuff that anywhere. They're a pretty cool little piece of kit. It's about a third of the price of a retail cat tourniquet.
So about $10 because
Yep.
you know we want to spend about $30 on our tourniquets from a reputable source was the last time you guys told me.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about when you go to purchase your materials, how to ensure that you're getting something that actually is usable. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the tourniquets that I have here. I have 3 different types of tourniquets. The cat tourniquet. This is a cat Gen 7. There's not a whole lot of difference from the earlier cat 3s to the cat 7s. It's just where they're at. This is the soft TT wide.
Can you unravel can you show this the Gen 7 again and just sort of give it a little
sure.
more.
So this is the Gen 7, and it's a Velcro adhesion system. I staged mine so it's already threaded through the buckle. I'm just going to go ahead and put this on. So generally, the nice thing about this is that you can self-apply this fairly easily, and you can get fairly good tension, and then just do the windlass, and you can put this on over clothing, and usually you want to go 2 to 3 inches above the wound area. You do not want to put it on the elbow. I'm trying not to get it all. And then you, as tight as you can go. It's not going to feel good. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt like crazy. But then your patient's not going to argue with you much if they pass out anyway. So, and if you're self-practicing
either angle the camera down or stand up so we can see the actual windlass.
If you're self-practicing this, here's the windlass right here, and I've locked it in.
Yep.
And I've taken the little, there's a little piece over there. You're going to want to write the time that you put it on. Now, generally, if you're practicing this on self-application, I always go down and see if I've got my radial pulse. If I don't have my radial pulse, it tells me that I've got good tourniquet action on there. And you can leave this on, as we said in the last class. You can leave this on for a really long time. I know there's, in the old days, they told you, that you're supposed to open it up and relieve the pressure and then tighten it back up. Don't do that. Once you apply the tourniquet, do not remove it. It will be removed by whatever medical professional your patient or yourself gets to. So that's the cat. And I like it because it's really easy to self-administer. But I carry 2 different types of tourniquets. I carry the cat, and then I carry the soft TT wide. And the reason I carry this is that this is a really good tourniquet if you're applying it to somebody else. It's not easily self-applied because of the way the buckle is.
Angle the camera down so we can see the whole thing because it's mostly out of frame. Perfect. Beautiful.
So the advantage to the soft T, the soft TT wide, is the windlass is metal, it's not plastic, and it also has a secondary buckling system to hold the windlass in place. So even if it were to slip out of the clip, it would still be held in place. And again, my problem with this is I find this really hard to self-administer because of the way the buckle is. But it's a great tourniquet. It does a really good job. I recommend that you carry 2 tourniquets with you. And a lot of reasons. There is also the chance that you will have to administer more than 1 tourniquet to stop a bleed. Where I've found that in my own personal experience where I've had to use tourniquets more than 1 is when I'm looking at a lower extremity, like your leg, where that muscle area is pretty significant, and it may require the added pressure of a second tourniquet to stop the flow of blood. And then the last one that we have here, this is the soft tactical. I hate this thing. I'm going to show you why I hate this thing. And it's not very widely used anymore. But
put the camera down so we can see the real full extent of the hate.
Okay. Do you see this lovely little mechanism right here, this little buckle that is a real pain in the butt because you have to tighten this down so it doesn't slip. It's narrow. I hate narrow tourniquets because I actually don't think they give you a wide enough pressure point. You can see that this is much narrower than the soft wide.
Can you show us that buckle? I know what it looks like, but if you show us the actual buckle a little bit in the frame.
Here's the buckle.
Either up or down, either up or move the camera. There you go.
Here's the buckle. and you can see it's got a little tensioning device that you're supposed to tighten down, and it's a clip. I really don't like this. The only one I like less than this is the rats. I find the rats tourniquet to be a complete and total waste of money.
The American College of Surgeons does not recommend the rats, and I believe that they rescinded recommendation on that first gen tactical soft.
Yep.
So.
They did, and there's a good reason.
Yep.
Want to just backtrack a little bit about clotting material, because aside from the quick clot, which is what is most people find in their trauma kits, we covered this, I think, both at National, and I covered this in the other class. But if you did not get this, this is Celox. You see that? This is Celox Rapid.
Yep, we can see it.
This is made for the possibility that your patient or yourself is on some form of blood thinner, and so this particular material is made from a chelated shrimp shells. It's highly purified, so you don't have to worry about allergic reactions to shellfish, and it works differently on the cascading on the clotting cascade because in a blood thinner you have a compromised clotting cascade, and this takes care of that. There are several different types. Well, there are two other types. There's this, and then there's another form that does the same thing. But you may actually want to think about carrying both quick clot and this in your trauma kit. Anything else? Carl?
No, sir.
Questions?
I have a quick question, gents. I got a couple of papers from the DoD that they went into research about clotting agent, versus regular gauze, and they were finding that with proper application, right? So if you have the techniques down, the difference between clotting agent, impregnated gauze, and regular gauze is so small to be significant. And I'm only saying this because obviously, like a regular gauze pack is like $3, $5, and the clotting agents are 40. So if anybody, as financial restraints, and so on, regular gauze with proper technique still works really well. You don't have to go out of your way and spend that kind of money. Obviously, if you can afford it, obviously even the small advantage is beneficial.
100% agree.
I think this is an excellent segue into Alessandro showing us a little bit about the kit. So unless you guys want to add anything else.
Well, I do have one other thing I want to add. So some time ago in the military was using a different granulated clotting agent. It was called wound clot. And it turns out that, and I think this speaks to one of the things that Carl was referring to in terms of granulated, is they found that in the granulated form of this particular type of clotting agent, it actually found its way into the bloodstream and created other problems before clotting actually occurred. So it's one more reason not to use a granulated form of clotting agent.
And just right before Al gets going, if you can, try not to practice with your operational gear, just with regard to tourniquets. If you're going to invest in a trainer, preferably one that's a different color than your operational kit, so that you're not, these things are made to be bomb-proof and last a long time, but material stresses, you don't want to practice on something that you want to be saving your life the first time out of the jump. So.
Yeah, the ones that I use, even though they are actual cats in soft TT wides, these are not things that I carry in my trauma kits or in any of my other smaller first aid supplies that I keep either in my car or in my range bag. So I just use them specifically to show people how to use them.
So buy 3, not just 2. Speaking of buying stuff.
Yeah.
All right, that time already, huh?
Yeah.
Very well.
One other thing is, please don't buy your tourniquets from Amazon.
Yeah, yeah.
Spend the spend the $30 and get the right one.
When we got them back in the store, we're going to buy them from the store. But Al's going to show us the SFD Responder, and then we'll do a little show and tell with other folks who've got their kits handy. I think Carl's got one, and I think Lonnie's got one. But Al, it's all you.
All right. So obviously, some of you might be familiar with the SFD Responder. It's been on the store. It was at Nationals and so on. Basically, it's an idea that I took to a friend of mine from Fabio from Frog Pro, and we kind of developed it together. I give him all the credit for the awesome design touches and that sets it apart, right? But just to give you an idea, it goes on your ankle, right? The difference between other models on the market is that both sides are elastic, so you can actually cinch it to your level of comfort around your leg. It can fit from super small, wrist-like ankles to really big ones, right? So some people wear it around their duty boots, the cowboy boots, and some people with super, super, super small ankle can still wear it, right? A couple of other things that set it apart is that, so the both elastic has to keep the material in. There is an open bottom design. I don't know if you can, let me see, right? There's an open bottom design with some harder cordura over here. So the open bottom helps to keep the material in. And the cordura here helps to maintain the integrity of the material, the elastic material, because this is what make contact with your shoe, with your boot, and so on and so forth. On the inside, there is a half-inch strip of silicone on both sides of the pocket. So again, that helps to prevent stuff from coming out. And it, because there's no extra flap, this and that, it stays really comfortable and it stays really light. The other thing is this big long Velcro thing. So there is 3D mesh on one side, female Velcro on the other. So this is actually the part that goes against your skin, which again helps with breathability, comfort, and all that. And on the other side, we had a much wider male Velcro because we know, especially the ankle Velcro, if you get sweaty, if you get wet and so on, with this motion tends to like unravel itself, right? So this gives you a much wider area, so it's gonna stay a lot more secure. Incidentally, over here, you can either attach extra things with molly or with bungee cord, right? So the more training you have, the more tool you can put on it. Going back to what Lonnie was saying, like, there's not really much point in putting like the whole thing here if you're not allowed to use it in real life, right? And a buddy of mine is a Corpsman. He actually has a full surgical kit, US Army surgical kit in one of the pockets, right? But it, he knows what to do with it. Now, this one is specifically designed to carry like your basic trauma kit, right? So over here, we have a survival blanket. Again, blood loss, shock, if you have a chance, this is something that after you apply everything else, you can wrap the patient in and it's another advantage. We have this is the civilian version, the Israeli bandage. It's a compression bandage and with a windlass, so you can actually tighten it up really well. And this goes, what Lonnie and Carl were saying, like, you need to apply pressure and you stay there until help arrives. If you have a bit more training, if you have a bit more, people to help, you can use one of these things. You wrap it and they can get super tight so that you can move on and help somebody else, particularly if you're around with your family, friends, people that you know, and so on and so forth. On the middle pocket, we have a mini shears, right? And again, helps really, obviously like certain things you can apply over the cloth, like the tourniquet and so on. Gauze and pressure bandage and so on, they're best applied on the flesh. So this clears the way for you to be able to do that. We have compression gauze. Again, this is like pretty cool because like it comes out of here and you can actually feed it off of here so it doesn't unravel on the ground. Not that we are concerned with sterility, as was mentioned, but we are concerned with, the gauze falling and going, and wrapping on things, and now you're fighting with everything in order to stop that wound. And finally, we got the eye-fin seals, right? This is the compact version. The regular version works as well. You just need to fold them a little more. These are compact, and you know, they work really well. Once you open them up, they're twice the size of this, right? So basically, it would be this size on a chest seal. And the other advantage is that it has a valve, right? And the valve helps because you don't have to know what kind of, you know, chest wound penetration, lung penetration it is. You put it on, and it's automatic. You don't have to like look at the patient and burp the seal. It kind of burps itself, meaning when there is, you know, when there is a buildup of pressure that may collapse the lung, the valve helps to release the pressure, so you know you have more time for the patient to stay healthy until help arrives. And finally, on the last pocket, we have a pair of gloves, and we have the soft TY tourniquet that was so well represented by Lonny. Now, I know that when it first came on the store and so on, people had a mini breakdown about how to pack it, because when it comes in, you know, this is pretty tight. The silicone, you know, prevents it from going down super easy, right? So let's see, just to give you an idea, you know, I got my thing here, and you can do it any which way, right? I start from the small pocket, right? I put, you know, you open it up, pardon me, open it up with 2 fingers, push it in, and then it just like, you know, you're threading it in. You're pushing one side, you're pushing a little bit of the other. Let's see if that.
No,
but
that's
basically,
perfect.
right?
Perfect field of view. You got it.
Yeah. And so on this particular tourniquet, I go until the first buckle, right? And then I just put my gloves, smooth them out, put them there. Right? So now I'm ready. If there is a big bleeder, particularly and so on and so forth, I need a tourniquet. As I go for my tourniquet, the gloves are in my hand. Now I can decide to take the time to put them on. Just as Lonny said, if it's myself or if it's my wife or a loved one, I may, and it depending on the you know, how much the arterial bleed is going, I may decide to just put the tourniquet first, right? That was touched upon earlier. Now, for the chest seals, right? What I do, let me see. All right, when they come nice and open. So I fold all the edges in, right? So that it stays more compact, and not only that, but when it goes in, the edges help to get a little grip, right? So instead of putting one thing at a time, I set them up here, right? Kind of like so. And then again, I open it up and I insert it and then keep pushing, you know, pull on the back, pull on the front. I want to make sure that I see the material coming through the little loop here, right? So now I know that it's as far down as possible. You know, it may take a little minute, you know, but you take your time and really squeeze it in. Right? Now, when this is done, I take the shear and just stuck it in, right? Now, couple of things that you're gonna pick up for yourself, but I'll tell them just, you know, it's free, right? When you fold the thing, you see this little corner, keep them on the outside, right? Don't keep them towards your leg, because, you know, that way they're not gonna rub you, it's not gonna be uncomfortable, right? Here we go. Now, finally, I got the Israeli bandage and the blanket. Again, I fold them together. It's almost like packing a wound, but I'm just packing a pocket, right? So it's free training for you guys. So there you go. Now it's packed, it's very low key, you put it on, it kind of disappears, and after like, you know, a day or two, you forget you're actually wearing it. Now, one little thing that I do every morning before I put it on, I just squish, pardon me, hi again. I just, you know, make sure that it's in tight, everything is in tight, everything is in tight. All right, now I put it on and I'm good to go all day. Like, I've had, you know, we sold a lot to law enforcement and so on, people that do a lot of tactical training, and stuff stays in. I just got a message from one guy. I said, man, you know, I lost one thing on the first generation that didn't have the silicone right? And he said, but I lost it because I was in a food pursuit. I ended up in a fight on the ground running around. So, you know, it's a pretty extreme situation. So on your everyday life, you don't worry about losing any of this stuff. If this becomes, you know, this is like an inch thick, maybe an inch and a half on this side, if it's, you know, if it doesn't fit under your, you know, slack, your business suit or whatever, you know, the thickest thing is the compression bandage. There is another compression bandage. It's the H&H compression bandage. It's a little bit more diminutive. It still works well. You know, obviously you don't have as much material as this, but it can work well. And then you keep something on you that can work really well. Cool.
I will add no skinny jeans, right? So you, just like with carrying a handgun, you might need to change your.
You know, there is explicit teaching and implicit teaching, right? So we're trying to affect a change in the world of fashion by, and you know, having people not able to wear skinny jeans as much as possible. Now, obviously, this is on you. This is your line 1 trauma kit, right? It can be on you, you know, all the time. It's limited in supply, right? So now we can look at another pack. This is called the Orthos pack, still from Frocpro. And nothing to do with the design. This is all Fabio's doing, and it's pretty awesome stuff, right? So you can have this, like with this flap, I put this on the headrest of my car on the passenger side, squeeze it down, and now I have this on the back of the passenger seat of my car all the time. Couple of things. So if you are tactically inclined, you can mold it on other equipment. You can Velcro it around a battle belt if the battle belt has Velcro. And this, as you can see, this zips in, and you can actually put it under your Velcro on your plate carrier if you need to, right? But the advantage of this is that either side you pull. Now you have this coming out, right? And on this one, this is kind of my like more serious kind of wound packing and stuff. So I have a 6 inch instead of a 4 inch Israeli bandage, right? I got two sets of eye fins, right? So we can take care of 4 chest wounds, right? Here I have a Cheeto, whatever, clotting agent gauze and a regular gauze. And this is an OLS bandage. It's a 4 inch OLS bandage. The OLS bandage is really multi-purpose. There is a lot of gauze within that you can use to pack the wound before you apply the pressure bandage. There is a little eye relief plastic thing that you can put on the bleeder, which adds to put pressure on the bleeding spot. So it's a nice piece of kit that wouldn't fit in the anchor rig, so that's where it goes, right? And here you can have extra of these. You can set them up however you want. You can have a couple set up and change them depending whether you're going hunting or whether you're just going hiking, for instance, right? Another couple of things over here, there is an integral pocket for gloves. So you just stuff gloves over here. Again, more training for packing wounds. That's free, guys. And then you just pull out, put your gloves on and get going. And here we have one pocket for a tourniquet, and then I can put another tourniquet in the bungee cord over here, right? And the advantage here, we have molly, right? So there's another, that's a emergency strap hook, right? They work really well too. They not necessarily work as well as the shear because they can get binded and cut up and so on, but you know, it's more you know, low profile, you know, but it's another good piece of kit, right? And again, you can set it here, or here you have room to add, you know, molly or bungee, anything else that you may be able to use, right? Same thing on here, you know, with EpiPens and all that jazz. Now, oh, and by the way, here you can cinch it down or, you know, open it up depending on how much gear you put into this bag. Then, lastly, the other step up, if you will, this is a chest pouch organizer, right? Again, we got molly on the front, you got pocket that you can put stuff in, pocket in the front, pocket in the back. And then when you open it, right, you can set it up one side with like spare magazine, your CCW carrier, whatever. And the other side, it comes with 2 of these, and a bunch of bungee cord and toggle, so you can set up however you want it, right? And again, you know, pardon me. So here too, you can carry with your straps as a standalone thing, right? Or you can have it on your chest rig up here, or using a similar strap, you can put it on your chest, on your plate carrier, right? But again, here you can also toggle this. So if you prefer a 90-degree thing, so now you can work from here, or you can take this off, right? And give it to somebody else, or work, you know, if you need to. Obviously, you can have it set up with both medical gear on both, so it becomes a pretty nice, nice kit. Let me see, I think that was it for the gear geek portion of the class. If you have any questions, feel free.
Anybody else got any gear they want to show off, Lonnie or Carl? Carl, you wanted to show your quick thing. We're right at the 9 o'clock hour, so we're about done. We can go a few more minutes.
Now, my trauma kit's still locked up in a trailer that I can't access.
You know, the only thing that I've got, I have a commercial bleeding control kit from North American Rescue. They're one of the legit outfits that provides tons of bleeding control supplies. This is one of their vacuum sealed, ready to deploy solutions. It comes with a cat tourniquet, shears, an emergency blanket, 2 sets of gloves, a couple of decks of lay flat pack gauze. It's a nice little solution if for example you work somewhere where you're considering a public access program for Stop the Bleed supplies, or if you just want something that's an all-in-one. It comes in a sealed kit that you can dump somewhere and forget about it. So just something to think about. And of course,
show us your Frog Pro.
I was going to say, I do have my own, as Al just demonstrated, packed very similarly to how he had his laid out. And my own personal cat, this is the one that lives in my bag, and I keep a Swat in my work bag, my briefcase, for just walking around. So.
Great. We did have one question from the class for our well, anybody who wants to answer it. Then I think we'll probably wrap it up. So you know, we've all had Stop the Bleed class. Some of us multiple times. We've had this this demonstration of additional technique. What's if somebody wanted more training? Where do they go? What's the next thing they do to get more? Maybe slightly less than going to a local community college or something and take an EMT course for a semester. Is there something in between there, here and there, or is that what they ought to do?
Carl, you're on that side of the world.
I think it depends on what the purpose is. So if it's personal interest, then continuing to look for community programming or public access programming that interests you. There are, for example, first aid and austere first aid and wilderness first aid courses that are open to the public that don't require an EMT certification. Some of them do, but many of them don't. That might give you another flavor of how to apply the material. I love learning new ways to repurpose anything that I have to my benefit. And you'll definitely learn how to do that in the wilderness and austere focused courses. If you really want the deep dive technical side of it, then you're going to have to go to a structured EMT program or a structured first responder program. That's where you will start to interact with the anatomy and physiology and some more of the more directed and didactic types of feedback that maybe you're looking for. But there are ways to find, I think, some more interesting elements of this by leveraging community emergency response teams CERT programming is always putting on stuff like this, and they might be able to point you at something that scratches the itch a little bit better without having to go through a full-blown EMT course. Don't go to EMT school unless you plan on practicing. Like, there's just no reason to do it. You won't retain the material unless you're using it, and you won't get to use it unless you're working for somebody in that capacity. So you'd blow a lot of money for no reason.
The only reason I could see to do an EMT class is it allows you legally to do more than what is normally considered the Good Samaritan stuff. But again, like Carl said, unless you're actually going to go to work as an EMT and do the whole certification program and do all the tests, it's not going to give you any greater advantage than doing the wilderness first aid and some of the other first aid classes, that you are more than likely to use that stuff more so than you would the in-depth training as an EMT.
All right, I have one more question, and I think we're going to call it, because it's you know, there's things to be doing, like watching movies and having a glass of wine. The one last question is, somebody wanted to somebody asked specifically for Carl to do it, but I'm not sure Carl can, because I don't think he's got one handy, to show one more time the staging of a tourniquet before it gets shoved into a kit. I don't know if that might be more appropriate for Lonnie to do it.
Well, no, he's got it. Go ahead and stage your
right.
cat. You've got your cat, right?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead and stage your cat.
All right, well, that does look great. You weren't kidding about the camera head.
It looks really good.
It did look really good. So here's my cat. I've got it more or less open. Hold on. I'll open it up just a hair more. But all right, here it is. I always leave, so it's through the buckle. You can see the tail here. I have it folded down on itself to give me just a little bit of purchase that I can grab once I've got it out and ready to use. The reason for having it through the buckle is because you don't have to fool around with gloved hands, potentially, or not gloved hands, that are potentially already slick with blood or perspiration. It's freaky to come across somebody with a serious wound or a serious bleed. And so the last thing that you want to be trying to do is like thread this needle while somebody's like bleeding out in front of your face. So always, once you've got your device, whether it's a cat or something else, but the ones that utilize this buckle, make sure that you get it out of the packaging, get the plastic off of it, and begin, have fed it through the buckle so that it's ready to go. You can slap this over an arm, over a leg. It's just ready to use as soon as you deploy it from your holster or your pocket, whatever you've got it kept in. I usually also tuck the windlass into one of the holders just to keep it out of the way while I've got it in a holster. To fold it, so upright, let me see if I can get the camera to do what I want it to do. I'll probably have to do it this way. So the top of the backing is right here. I fold down over the top of the backing. And then I just, once I get down to the buckle, I fold back up, get back up to the top, fold back down, and it's laid right on top of itself and made a little sandwich. Easy peasy. Throw it in your pocket, throw it in your duty belt holster. This will fit in just about any commercial tourniquet holder that's made for cats in this nice little form factor. Awesome. I see people sometimes like have this closed on a stage tourniquet. Don't do that, because then you've got to get it out of the way when you're trying to feed that windlass into the holder. And if you haven't already done it, you got to fool and get it out of the way. So just like that, good to go.
That's great. Thanks. Anybody have any questions? Because I think we're at time. Well, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody so everybody can say thanks in person. So everybody say thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Sure, there you go.
Slow you guys. That was awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
You gotta keep the easy in the body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the easy goes in the body. It doesn't go
Right.
back in the, no.
So Carl, one more reminder, just, there's another shot for you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. This will be on YouTube as soon as the video processes. So
Oh, yeah.
thanks so much, Carl, Alessandro, Lonnie.
Eat my Italian sausage watching fucking
Thank you, guys.
fucking train
We'll
wreck.
see you next time.
Take it easy, guys.
A good one.